The shuttle hummed softly as it descended toward the barren world of Erythra 9. I had flown countless missions across the outer rim, but something about this delivery felt wrong. The transmission from command had been terse. Pickup and delivery. No questions asked. Proceed immediately. That was unusual for an assignment labeled urgent. Usually urgency came with a reason, but this didn't. The planet's surface spread beneath me like a rust-colored wasteland, dotted with jagged rock formations and the occasional streak of frozen ice. Erythra 9 had been designated a quarantine world decades ago, after the outbreak of the Zyphron virus, a pathogen lethal to humans and nearly every known alien species. Only the most hardened mercenaries and logistics teams ever went there now. The official word was containment facility, but I knew better. Anything quarantined on a world like this usually meant trouble. I adjusted my grip on the controls and guided the shuttle to a landing pad barely visible in the swirling dust. The wind outside was a vicious, biting current that rattled the hull. I could feel the static charge in the air, prickling my skin through the suit. The bay doors hissed open, and I was greeted by a figure I had not expected. A woman, seated in the center of the landing pad, shrouded in a hooded cloak. She didn't move, didn't speak, just sat, the fabric of her clothing fluttering in the turbulent air. The silence was almost suffocating. I exhaled slowly, lowering the ramp. Delivery, I said cautiously, keeping my voice steady. I've got. Then I saw it. A child, no older than 5, clinging to the woman's leg. The child's wide, dark eyes stared at me, reflecting a mixture of fear and something almost feral. The woman made no move to protect or explain. She simply remained there, a statue in the wind, as if waiting for me to act. I hesitated. My training screamed at me to maintain caution. The outer rim was full of horrors that could kill in a heartbeat, and here I was, landing on a quarantined planet for a delivery without even knowing what, or who, I was picking up. But something in the child's gaze compelled me forward. It wasn't just fear. It was trust. I stepped out onto the platform, boots crunching against the frozen dust. The woman didn't flinch. I extended my hand toward the child. "It's okay," I said softly, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince, her or myself. The child hesitated, then, with a clinging desperation, let go of the woman's leg and ran into my arms. She was light, surprisingly light, almost unnaturally so. As I lifted her, I noticed her eyes glinting faintly in the dim light. They weren't entirely human. Subtle, delicate patterns shimmered across her irises, faintly luminescent. I froze. "Who, what?" I began, but the woman finally spoke. Her voice was soft, melodic, but carried a weight that made the words feel like commands. "She must come with you." I blinked, momentarily stunned. I don't even know your name." She remained silent. Her eyes were fixed on the child, an expression I couldn't decipher. Sadness? Relief? Fear? Perhaps all three. The shuttle systems beeped, reminding me of time. Whatever this delivery was, I had to comply. I secured the child in the cabin, then looked back. The woman raised a single hand, and the wind seemed to bend around her. A subtle force, barely perceptible, but enough to make me step back. I don't know what's happening," I admitted, gripping the controls. "But I'll keep her safe." For a moment, her hood slipped, revealing a face that was not entirely human. Her skin bore faint traces of bioluminescence, like veins of starlight beneath pale, flawless skin. I realized, with a chill, that I had been standing in front of something alien, something ancient. And yet the child was human. Or nearly human. The shuttle lifted off with a roar, cutting through the dust storms of Erythra. 9. I didn't look back. The woman didn't follow, didn't even move as we disappeared into the sky. The silence between us in the cabin was heavy, broken only by the soft breaths of the child as she slept, exhausted from clinging to her mother. By the time we cleared the atmosphere and entered the cold void of space, I began to examine my unexpected passenger. She was small, fragile-looking, with soft, dark hair curling around her pale face. But the faint shimmer in her eyes, it was unnerving. She wasn't just a child. She was something different, something special. I tried the ship's AI to access any records. Log. Search for quarantine records of Erythra. 9. Recent deliveries. The AI responded with static before displaying an incomplete record. Subject: S. 1172. Age: 4. Status: unknown. Delivery: immediate. Custodian: unknown. Unknown. That was all. There was no other information about her. No origin, no medical history, no reason for quarantine. My gut told me she wasn't just dangerous. Someone or something wanted her contained. I sighed and sat back. Great. No instructions, no warning, and a kid with glowing eyes. This'll be easy, I muttered sarcastically. The child stirred and opened her eyes, looking directly at me. The shimmer in her pupils intensified. I froze. Then, softly, almost in a whisper I didn't expect her to produce, she said, "Safe." It wasn't a word. It was more than that. It was a presence and assurance. And strangely, I believed her. Days passed in hyperspace, and I began to notice odd things. Equipment near the child would hum, lights flickering when she was upset, or blink with soft pulses when she smiled. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to static or malfunctions. But when I observed her one evening, staring at the stars through the viewport, I realized the patterns in her eyes mirrored constellations I had never seen, ones not on any galactic charts. Something about her was cosmic. I decided to confront her. "Hey, kid. You're not exactly ordinary, are you?" Her gaze met mine, and I swear she smiled knowingly. Then she whispered again. "Protection." It wasn't a request. It was a mission statement. She was asking me, or perhaps telling me, to protect her. And I realized then that no one else could. Whoever sent me here, whoever wanted her delivered, they didn't care about her life. They only cared about control. Half a week later, we exited hyperspace near a neutral outpost on the edge of the Orion Reach. I was preparing to land when sensors detected a small fleet approaching at high speed. Not military ships, but fast, lethal-looking craft with no insignia. Pirates? Mercenaries? No, the way they moved was precise, almost predatory. I looked down at the child. She clutched the seat straps, but unlike before, her eyes flared with bright, fiery patterns. I didn't understand how she could sense danger, but she clearly did. The first volley of plasma bolts struck the shields. The shuttle shuddered. "Okay," I muttered. "This just got complicated." Then it happened. The child's aura expanded, faint at first, then glowing brightly. The shield surged beyond maximum capacity, repelling the attackers with a pulse of energy I could neither explain nor control. The craft rocked violently, but none of the incoming shots penetrated. The enemy fleet retreated, confused and wary, as if they had encountered something beyond their understanding. I was shaking. You just... She leaned into me, exhausted, whispering, "Safe. Safe." It seemed that no matter how dire the situation, she could protect herself, or at least warn me when danger was near. But I knew that wasn't sustainable. She was a child, and the universe had a way of testing even the most extraordinary. We landed at the outpost, and I began the process of contacting command. When I finally connected, their response was cold, sterile, and terrifying. Subject delivered? Yes, I said cautiously. She's fine. She seems human, but there are anomalies. Anomalies are irrelevant. Custody of S-1172 is now under Galactic oversight. You are to remain on station for debriefing. I froze. Galactic oversight. That was the authority that dealt with matters deemed too sensitive for public knowledge, so sensitive that they often erased entire records to maintain secrecy. And now they had my passenger. My responsibility. Before I could respond, the child stirred and looked at the communication device. Her gaze flared briefly, and the static on the line changed to clear words, soft, calm. No, the line went dead. I turned toward her, startled. You just... She leaned against my chest, small and trembling, but with an aura of undeniable strength. No, she whispered again. Not yet. Not safe. I understood then that she didn't just need protection. She was choosing when, where, and with whom that protection could exist. She was no mere child. She was a force of life, of power, of something far older than I could comprehend. Weeks passed. We stayed off the official radar, moving from outpost to outpost, always keeping just ahead of those who wanted her. Slowly, I learned her patterns, her needs, her subtle communication. She would cling to me when afraid, laugh with soft luminescent twinkles when happy, and focus her energy when danger approached. And through it all, I began to understand something profound. In a universe filled with war, hunger, and cruelty, here was a being that embodied hope. A child, yes, but a child with the galaxy's potential coursing in her veins. One night, on a quiet asteroid station orbiting a dying star, she turned to me with eyes reflecting the nebula outside. Safe, she asked. I nodded. For now. But the universe, it's dangerous. Her small hand reached for mine, gripping it firmly. Together, she whispered. I realized then that I hadn't just been tasked with a delivery. I had been entrusted with something infinitely more important. Not just a child, not just a cargo, but a being who could change the balance of life in the galaxy. And as I looked down at her, small and luminous against the darkness of space, I knew that I wouldn't fail her, no matter what came next, because she wasn't just a child. She was a force of hope, a guardian of the light, a reminder that even in the most desolate corners of the universe, life, extraordinary, defiant, human, and more, could cling on, and I would follow her anywhere, even into the stars themselves. The weeks of hiding, traveling between forgotten outposts, and constantly watching the skies took their toll. I had learned the child's subtle ways, how she could sense danger, how she could communicate without words, how she clung to me for reassurance, but I still didn't know who had sent her, or why. And every time I tried to contact Galactic Oversight, my attempts were met with deadlines or scrambled replies. One evening, as we docked at a deserted orbital station orbiting a dying blue star, I noticed a pattern in the stars outside. The child was staring at the nebulae, humming softly. I had never heard her make a sound like that before. The lights in her eyes flickered with intensity, and suddenly, holographic constellations began forming in midair. I stepped closer, heart pounding. You're mapping something? She looked at me, blinking slowly. Home, she whispered. My chest tightened. I hadn't thought of it that way before. In all our fleeing and hiding, I had assumed she was just a target. But now I realized she wasn't running just for survival. She was searching for where she truly belonged. The holographic patterns coalesced into a path, a set of coordinates pointing deep into uncharted space. It wasn't just a place. It was a sanctuary, a world that resonated with her very being. I felt the weight of responsibility pressing on me. Whoever had sent her to Erythra 9 might still be hunting her, but if we followed these coordinates, we might find safety. Or worse. I checked the scanners. Nothing. No patrols, no fleets, no warnings. All right, I said. Let's find your home. The journey was treacherous. Nebula storms tore at the hull. Gravitational anomalies threatened to tear the shuttle apart, and every system we relied on flickered and failed. But the child never panicked. In fact, she guided me, her energy resonating with the patterns in the stars, almost like she could manipulate the universe itself. She wasn't just extraordinary, she was cosmic. Finally, after days of navigating hazards that would have killed most crews, we approached a planet bathed in a violet glow. It wasn't on any chart. It wasn't in any database. The atmosphere shimmered with a light that made the frozen metal of my shuttle gleam like liquid silver. As we descended, I understood why. The child's eyes glowed brighter than ever, her small hands pressed against the glass of the viewport as if she could feel the very heartbeat of the planet. She whispered a single word, home. The surface was lush, impossibly alive. Towering crystalline trees pulsed with energy. Rivers shimmered like liquid starlight. And everywhere I looked, the air seemed to hum with a quiet, infinite intelligence. I couldn't explain it scientifically, only feel it. She was drawn toward a pool at the center of a crystal grove. Kneeling there, she reached into the water, and the ripples spread outward like waves across space itself. Then, as if in response, the trees, the rivers, even the ground itself began to shimmer and resonate with her presence. I approached cautiously, unsure what to say. The child looked up, and for the first time, her expression was one of complete peace. "You kept me safe," she said softly, not as a child speaking to an adult, but as something far older addressing someone who had proven worthy. I swallowed hard. I only did what I could. She smiled, and in that moment, the air around us seemed to shift, almost alive, wrapping around both of us. A sense of calm settled over me, a feeling that no matter what the universe tried to throw at us, here, in this sanctuary, we were safe. Then she reached out, tiny hand gripping mine. "Stay," she said simply. I hesitated. My life had been a wandering one, full of missions and danger. But now I understood that this child, this sanctuary, was more than a mission. It was a choice, a purpose. I nodded. "I'll stay." And so we did. Days turned into weeks. I learned the rhythms of this world. The child explored, touching the crystal flora, laughing as her energy harmonized with the planet. I helped her, guided her, and in turn, I found a peace I had never known. Here, in a corner of the universe untouched by war, fear, or greed, life was something more than survival. It was wonder. One morning, as twin suns rose over the crystalline horizon, she looked at me, eyes glowing faintly with the familiar starlight patterns. "Ready?" she asked. I smiled, though I didn't fully know what she meant. "For what?" "For the universe," she said simply. "It's not done with us yet." And I understood. This wasn't the end of our journey. It was only the beginning. She had been delivered to me without a word, yet she had given me everything. Purpose, hope, and a bond stronger than any mission. Together, we would face the universe, not as predator and prey, but as guardian and ward. As family. I lifted her into my arms one last time as we looked out at the horizon. The stars above were no longer distant points of light. They were possibilities waiting for us. And in her eyes, I saw not just a child, but a spark of the cosmos itself, alive, defiant, and full of promise. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear. Not for the dangers of the universe, nor for the unknown path ahead. I felt ready, because she was ready. And together, we would face whatever came next. The galaxy was vast. The universe was dangerous. But with her by my side, I knew one truth above all. Hope, even in its smallest, most fragile form, could change everything. And so, we stepped forward into the light of a new dawn and the promise of countless stars to come.